Welcome to another episode of AGL Self Evolution. I'm here with my friend Sam. He's almost like a shaman. He knows so much about psychedelics and spirituality. Um, so why don't you tell us a little bit about taking psychedelics and spirituality and how it's helped your quality of life?
All right. So for me, I got into psychedelics very young, which is pretty similar to like the Native American tradition where they would give their kid, like they'd give like a 13-year-old boy like peyote and make him survive on his own in the wilderness. So I did psilocybin mushrooms when I was 13, and I was 13. I probably weighed about around 100 pounds. Actually, I was pretty light, so I had a pretty life-shaking experience. I mean, I was like, when I first did it, I was pretty scared, honestly, because it was like everything looked different. It was like I was just totally somewhere else, and they were so strong that I was literally, what I took was probably about 2.5 grams of the shroom powder. So that's like the bottom of the bag, like it's a lot of spores. And so I took that.
You mind if I turn this on the light?
Oh no, well.
Or no? Oh, okay,
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that when you're driving.
Okay.
Not very long, at least. Anyways, but yeah, I didn't recognize my own brother, and so a lot of the times, like, how I find it sort of therapeutic and it helps you is it helps you keep like your core strength stronger. Like, you feel more rooted and more comfortable with yourself because you realize that, hey, I can still be alive and be totally out of this world. And so normally your trips go, I always think of it like a peak, It goes up and then down. And usually when you're on the come up, you sort of get a little bit anxious and you feel a little bit unnerved. And so originally, it's when I first started doing shrooms, I would feel like I would almost have sort of a bad trip on the come up, and then I would get used to it and everything would snap together, and then it was like I was lost and then I was found. But now that doesn't really happen to me. I always stay level. But of course, I'm very experienced. I'm 19 now, so I've been doing psychedelics for over 6 years.
So would you say that you feel closer to the universe or God when you take these psychedelics?
Yeah, because I grew up in a Christian home, and so I'm an INFP, which is, if you know about Myers-Briggs personalities, that's very it's a very interesting type for things like religion and spirituality, because we're really good at looking at things in different ways. So I was always taught as a Christian boy, God is totally separate from this world. And if you're like, a lot of times, I mean, that's sort of the dualism of it. Like, if you can't be a master, you can't be a slave to God and a slave to the world. So what psychedelics did for me is it made me start looking at new perspectives, because actually what the psychedelics do to you is there's a part of your brain that categorizes things, and that just shuts off. And so instead of having your brain work in separate parts, you have like a unity brain. Your whole brain fires up. If you look at like CAT scans, or I'm pretty sure that's what they're called, of people's brains on psychedelics, their whole brain will be fired up. So it's sort of like all the boxes, all the categories are just removed, and you're just sort of left with this unfiltered world. And of course, there's visuals involved, and those are cool, but that's not the point of it. The point of it for me is always dive deeper into introspection and reveal deeper parts of myself that I didn't normally see, because it's like your conscious brain and unconscious brain become one. So you're able to see all these different parts of yourself and really look deeper into yourself. And the more I was able to understand myself, the more I can be happy about who I am and what I'm doing and what I want to do. Shoot, what was the question? Did I answer that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Would you say that it will help you overcome if an individual is having problems, or do you think that it would be like the death of your ego if you if you were to take psychedelics? Like, does it change your perspective? Does it make you more humble? Does it make you a better human being?
Yeah, well, it does make you more humble, because you sort of become a bitch to it, really. It's almost like it's bossing you around. And so that's when you realize that, hey, I'm not all powerful. I'm not like you're not God to it. And what it is sort of hard to explain, because words are created in this universe and they can only be used to explain things of this universe, and that psychedelics is more of a spiritual thing. And of course your brain is the bridge between the spiritual world, some people might just call that the dream world, and the physical world. So it I've watched a lot of Terrence McKenna videos, and he certainly talks about this in the same way. But yeah, it's sort of like you sort of become unrecognizable to yourself, and then by that happening, you realize you're much more than you think you are, while at the same time you know there's things greater than you. So it's like it opens up new things. It shows you sort of higher powers, and I think it can be used to humble people and make people better. Like, I've talked to my brother about this, and he went really hard into psilocybin mushrooms in high school, and it really changed his life, because he thought that it helped him turn his life around, because it's sort of like you take a step back. You're taking a step back, or maybe you could call it a step forward. You're taking a step up and out, I would say, I guess. But by doing this, he realized the path that he was on was wrong. He was hanging out with drug addicts. He was bringing me along with him to hang out with drug addicts, and he's 3 years older than me, so he's the one that actually gave me psilocybin mushrooms. But when I was doing it the first time, he was doing ecstasy and drinking at the same time, and him and his friend. So they weren't having spiritual experiences, but I definitely was. But the thing that I realized is that I was able to be sort of content with dying, Like, I felt like if I died, I would just be able to float away and be fine, I'd still be alive. And so it's always kind of been a tool for people like Vikings. They would do it before war. There's these guys called the Berserkers, and they're like basically these guys that would dress up as bears, and they would do psychedelic mushrooms, and they'd feel like they were immortal. They were doing a different kind of mushroom most of the time. I'm sure they definitely did interact with psilocybin mushrooms, but they were doing Amanita muscaria mushrooms, which are those red and white ones, like the Mario ones. And those ones are a little bit different because they affect a different part of your brain. Where psilocybin mushrooms, what happens is your brain thinks that it's melatonin. And so the psilocybin goes through all of your melatonin receptors, and so it's your brain on something else. And I would say they feel more conscious, really. They feel like it's almost like an extra element is added to your brain, which I do agree with. Like Buddhist monks, they try to achieve this state without actually doing mushrooms. And like I've gone pretty deep into meditations, and I've felt the same sort of thing. Like it's like you let the haze of your life clear out, and then everything's clear, and you sit there and you're content with it. Like that's what you do when you meditate, but it's like it forces a meditation almost. And if you can't hold your own, you will have a bad trip. You won't be able to handle it. So I would say it makes you mentally stronger, and it totally opens your brain up to new avenues. And they've done some tests where they've used it to cure addiction, and it had like an 80% success rate, which is like higher than anything else.
Like what kind of addiction are we talking? Could it be alcohol? Could it be cigarettes?
It was nicotine addiction. And I'm addicted to nicotine, actually, but I haven't done psilocybin mushrooms for that long, and when I did do them not that long ago, it was more of a microdose. But yeah, it's sort of like you're sort of rewiring your brain is what you're doing. So mushrooms, like any type of mushroom, is usually pretty good for your brain, because we're closer related to mushrooms than we are any other like plant or bacteria. And if you look at a mushroom microscopically, it's fibers and stuff. It looks basically exactly the same as your brain. So it's like their brain. It's brain medicine. So when you do, especially psilocybin mushrooms, what happens is you create more brain cells way faster, and that can be a bad thing, because you can create negative thought patterns, and they will stay there. So that's why there's sort of this big controversy around them, is because people have wired their brains wrong. And I think, I don't know, I would say you really are, you're closer to God, whatever you want to call it, like source, or like
the universe, or
I always think of God as more as harmony, the concept of harmony. So if you are in harmony with the whole world around you, then you'll be totally fine with having a psychedelic trip. But if you're not, then you're gonna realize it, and you're not gonna feel good about it. If you're doing, I would say that personally, because it's very hard to encapsulate it into, like, just based off of my experiences, because everyone else's experiences are different. But for me, I would say it definitely helped, and definitely changed like how I viewed things. And I actually feel like I got better at things like geometry. Like, I was taking geometry in high school, and I noticed, like, if it was the day after a shroom trip, I would actually feel a little bit fresher. Where if you do like acid, you'll usually feel a little bit slower. Personally, that's what I felt.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, would you say that is like spiritually what the soul needs or what somebody needs to try to figure themselves out, and from a therapeutic standpoint?
Yeah, I would definitely say that's a good tool, and I admire that about certain Native American cultures, how they would use it. young boys, and it was sort of their transition from boy to man. I think that works. I think that totally works, because if you can hold your own in the spirit world, it's also like Jesus said, you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and you have to fear no evil.
Wow. So.
But that's more like dimethyltryptamine, DMT. It's more like how I would think of the valley of the shadow of death. Most of the time you won't get to that level on shrooms. I have before though. Like I've had a shroom trip where it'll basically take me into a DMT trip, and I'll start having it's like this beautiful warm spirit sort of just comes to you, and it was like pulling me up. It's like it's time to leave here for a bit. It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Wow.
Going down the rabbit hole.
And what did you see when you do those things? Like when you're on DMT, when you're on mushrooms, with different things. What kind of things do you see? Like what is the difference? How do you explain it?
So if we're gonna hop into DMT, that one's pretty hard to explain. But actually, I've talked about it so many times that I actually have a pretty good way of explaining what I saw. So for me, I use like a dab rig the first time. Actually, most of the times I use a dab rig. Actually, I have a banger bong that works really well for DMT. But I was using like a dab rig, so it's like a needle thing with like water in it, and so you just suck through it like a straw. And so I did a little bit over a point of DMT, and it was some good DMT. You don't always get DMT like that. I've had worse DMT, but I just took one hit, and I was trying to ghost it, and basically I saw like purple ribbons at first, like on the horizon, and then it was like something was right in front of me and all around me, and it just like grabbed me. It grabbed me and like pulled me up like through this crazy, what I would describe as like a kaleidoscope, but like a spiritual, it's not just like light bouncing. It was alive. It's weird because most people that do it, they always kind of feel like sort of like deja vu about it. Like it feels so familiar. It's like, is this where I'm from? A lot of people think that. And a lot of people, some people will have bad trips on DMT. Like, it's just so terrifying for them because their whole reality just got replaced. But they're like the same person. And so I think what it is, if you have done negative things in your life, I think it'll reflect in your DMT trip. Now I know a lot of sort of lower level, lower vibe people that have done DMT, and they still love it, but I don't like the way that they use it personally.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think you should take it very seriously. It's not something, because it's like it's something that's greater than yourself. Okay, but back to my first time. So I was having, is it 65? So I went through that kaleidoscope, and then I came out on the other side, and it's hard to explain. Mostly I could just say like very vibrant colors, but at first it was a little bit dimmer, and it was sort of like bluish, and then there was all these people, and they looked lost. It was like I was seeing people that were like, it was like I was seeing people's souls from our world, and they were lost. They were all wandering around. None of them looked like they knew where they were going. And I just looked at them. I was like, I'm not going over there. And then I went over, and then this is the part where it's a little bit of a blank space for me. I don't really know how to explain it, but then after it was like I was. So for a lot of people, like Terrence McKenna, he's described his trips where he says he meets these like machine elves.
Okay.
And they tell him to like make these shapes, these like moving shapes, basically.
Do you think these elves are evil or bad?
I think they could be either. Maybe. Actually, I've never met a bad one, and the only spirit that I've really seen is this green woman spirit. A lot of people think it's they call her Mother Ayahuasca if you do ayahuasca. I've never done ayahuasca, but I would love to. But yeah, she kind of fits the description of like the demiurge and like some Gnostic beliefs. But I think that spirit is the Holy Spirit, personally. But it's like the spirit of the earth. She kind of looks like Medusa. She's green, but yeah, I'm not gonna dive into that because that's just a little bit of a weird avenue. I wouldn't really like explain that to someone who hasn't done it. I mean, sometimes I kind of just have fun telling people crazy things and having them look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? But so after that, anyways, it was like I started seeing, it's like there was eyeballs everywhere, and if I looked in one eyeball, I could see that eyeball, but I could also see what that eyeball was seeing. So then it was like I was seeing every eyeball through every eyeball, and I was seeing everything from every perspective at once, and like that was heaven to me. That was pure bliss. It was like I was one with the brain of God. I was just in perfect, like, beautiful harmony with God, because I could see like God could see, you know. But also, like, I wouldn't, like, that's God to us here, but I think like God is like to an even further level, and it just keeps getting greater and greater, you know. It's not something that you could ever bring down here, because yeah, God is not of this world. God is like an independent variable, untouched by anything else. That's how I see God. But yeah, that's basically my DMT experience for the first time. I sort of go through the same thing, but it's very quick. It's like I don't go there really to have the beings teach me. I almost feel like they don't need to teach me anything. They always kind of just, like, they'll sort of just see me, and they'll just like sort of like know I know, and that's all that matters, really. Because I think deep down inside, every person really does know what's right. It's like if you read the book Crime and Punishment, you know, the guy is punished more by his is it? That's not right. No, it's the guy he's punished by his own conscious mind. You know, he feels so guilty about this murder he committed, that it's worse than like the actual punishment itself for getting caught. So he's driven to insanity. But yeah.
Wow.
Like, I wouldn't see it. Some people are like, that's how you get possessed by demons. I mean, maybe, but like, I know I'm not gonna get possessed by a demon, because I always see demons, like, demons are supposed to be lower spirits. And of course, demon, originally the word demon wasn't a negative term at all. It just meant spirit. But so lower spirits, I would say you would call them carnal spirits, you know. It's more like urges, you know. It's about domination, stuff like that. Where higher spirits, you know, they're just in the harmony, and they're just like your friends. Yeah.
So would you say that someone could find the truth? They could find the answers to the universe, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Well, actually, that's a very interesting thing. Joe Rogan's talked about pretty sure it was the U.S. government was trying to contact spirits to teach them how to make technology. And originally, actually, the Nazis were the first ones that did that. They would have mediums like Maria Orsic is one of their mediums, and they had another one named Seagram. But they would say beings. They would go into a trance state, and beings would tell them how to make technologies that we would not. I don't know what technologies they actually made with that though. So it's an interesting thing to think about. So yeah, I would say you get answers, and a lot of times, like, that's the reason I will do psychedelics, is to get answers. And of course, you have to be careful because your brain is so wide open, and everything. It's like if you think something, it's just going to appear. So you still have to be able to use like sort of the scientific method, but the type of wisdom that you get from it is more like creative, like female. It's more like intuition, you know. It's less like logic, but ultimately, like, you gotta hold on to your logic or you're gonna lose your mind.
Wow. So you have to be careful what you think.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Well, I mean, there you have it. You have somebody who's very experienced, very proficient in this field. You have your advice on it, and spirituality, and on the psychedelics. This is AGL Global. This is AGL Self-Evolution. Signing off. Please comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Okay. All right. Bye bye.